Oh my gosh, you guys. This one's gonna rule. Episode 50, the Tyler Hill podcast. And today we're gonna do something a little bit different. I'm just risking it for the biscuit today. I could tell all of these stories about my guest, and he is just somebody that I'm so honored to call a friend, somebody I admire to the moon. He was somebody who, I started out just as a fan of, and I copied him and emulated him when I was younger, and now we're pals, and we text and send inappropriate jokes that I'm not allowed to send to other clergy people or spiritual people that I work with, and so he's just become one of my best pals. But for today, for the 50th episode of the Tyler Hill podcast, which is crazy, 50 episodes in. I've invited my great friend Levi McAllister to interview me or to help lead the conversation. Usually on these Wednesday episodes, I'm interviewing other people, but one of my best pals today, Levi, I have invited to interview, to have a conversation with me. So here we are. Welcome, Levi, to the Tyler Hill podcast. What's up?
What's up? I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here. I love you.
Oh, I
I'm so
love you
excited about
too.
that. Yeah, man.
Oh, me too. I'll tell you one story. Before we became pals, this was about maybe 10, maybe almost 11 years ago. I'm newly married on my honeymoon in Mexico, and I got two messages while I was there. One was that you were coming through Colorado Springs and Denver, and that the people who were organizing your shows invited me to open for you at two shows, which was amazing. And I was so happy about that because I wanted to be a poet just like Levi the Poet. Also, I started getting these texts that said, Tyler, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I was like, what the hell is everybody talking about? And then I look on YouTube and there was a video from the Chariot that then said they were breaking up. And
Oh, oh no.
on my honeymoon, I
Oh
both
no.
got to find out I was opening for Levi the Poet again and found out my favorite brand of all time was also breaking up, both on my honeymoon in the same night. So, and
Man,
now
you
I
had a
get
real
to,
roller coaster of a honeymoon night, you
yes,
know?
exactly. That was a few nights in, thankfully. We
Okay.
were already in Mexico, but still.
Okay.
And now here I go from my highs of getting to open for Levi the Poet to getting to hang out with him on the 50th episode of my measly little podcast. Where you
That's
at tonight?
I'm not in Albuquerque. That's amazing that I said that. I'm in Nashville. I live in Nashville now, and I'm in my bedroom, just
Come on.
hanging out. It's so interesting that that you brought up that story because I was like scouring the internet and our text threads for past pictures of us and stuff, and you sent me one. I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago now, but it was a photo of us. It had to have been at one. I mean, we were both babies in
Yes.
this picture, and but I was thinking about those shows, and I remember coming through multiple times. We got to do stuff with you, and I can't. Was one of them? You had a coffee shop. We'll get into some of that maybe, but was one of them at your shop, or was that before you started everything?
Yeah, never did we have one. Like my coffee shop, we never did shows.
Okay.
But I do remember doing one at a place called Pike's Perk.
Okay.
And I remember I had this wild jacket that it like zipped up on the side, and I like slowly took it off out of my show during the show. And you were probably so tired, and you were just leaning up against there, and I kept looking at you feeling like, oh, Levi probably thinks I'm such an idiot because I was trying to be all super artistic and goofy, and I was wearing this like it was like a dress, and in my insecurities back then I was so terrified. But now you probably were just on tour, tired as hell. That
I
was
was on
also a
tour.
show I can remember. 21 Pilots released Blurry Face that same night of that show, or maybe the
Okay.
night before. And I was so excited to talk with you about it, but you hadn't listened yet. But
I
again,
hadn't.
yes.
I hadn't, although some sort of claim to fame was them opening up for me at a church show in a basement in Ohio.
That is awesome.
It was the year that me and Brandy were on the road with White Collar Sideshow, and we were like so dead. And then we were in the green room, and then this band was like, "What is that? This is a good opening band." Like, so we went in and watched them, and it was, uh, yeah, Josh and Tyler. It was wild.
There it is.
I know, I know. I love that. No,
Oh,
man,
yeah.
those shows were so much fun. Thank you for playing them with. I can't believe that it's. I mean, I know we keep going on about it, but it's really nice that all this time later, you're still
Mhm.
one of my favorite people, man. I
Yeah.
just
Thanks.
love you. Yeah,
It's
100%.
it's mutual, bro.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
take it away. It's
Take it
it's
away.
your platform. It's
It's
your
my
time.
it's my podcast.
There he is.
Well, I mean, we in our brief engagement about this conversation, we had
Yeah.
kind of talked about like I mean, part of me wants to use that to just as a jumping off point because you've got we've both been through quite a lot over the last.
Mhm.
I mean, those shows were before you got married, I think. So I
Yeah.
think I met you 2013, 14,
Yeah.
15, probably,
Yep. That sounds about
So
right.
um
Mm.
I mean, and I maybe know more than some, but if you were to if I mean, what happened to you, Tyler? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
where have you been since then? What
Yeah.
what has your life been? And
Yeah.
how did you end up here?
Yeah. Back in those days, I can remember, one of the things that's so interesting, we are talking about poetry and performing poetry and me being in those like that more self-expression. That was the first season of my life where I ever really was creative or I ever even expressed myself. The season before that was was so focused actually on sports. I was a jock way before I even
Okay.
was like an artist or a poet. And um, one of the ways I tend to almost like make turn my life into chapters is by kind of articulating the things that I've quit, all the things that I've quit over the years. And there's this season where growing up for a lot of reasons, and I could dive into it, but where I was all about baseball, and I was this athlete, um and I was touring these like colleges trying to decide which place was I going to go get my full ride scholarship. And we were even saying, is it possible for me to play professional baseball someday? Like that was on the table. And there was just this moment where I realized on that little tour, like, I don't like playing baseball at all. And I actually don't fit in with these people. And in hindsight, I actually got bullied a lot, but I didn't know it at the time. Um, and and so then I quit and I told my parents, I can remember saying, hey, I'm going to give up all my full ride scholarships to play baseball and I'm going to move to Colorado Springs. And I just
And where were
picked
you
it
living at the time?
in this teeny little mountain town called Salida, Colorado. So
Okay.
I was born and grew up through elementary school in New Mexico, which I still hold dear to my heart. But then we moved to Salida, Colorado, 6,000 people, mountain town. And I said, hey, I'm going to move to Colorado Springs. And then I moved to Colorado Springs, and then um, I started hanging out with all the hipsters, and I started hanging out with all the artists. But the funniest thing was like I was never taught how to express myself, how to make art, how to do anything. I knew who you were. I had this shirt at the time with Bradley Hathaway on it, a giant
Yes.
Bradley, and he had a giant face on there. So like I was into the poets, and I of course listened to like hardcore and punk music. Um, and so when I started hanging out with all the hipsters, they were like, "Well, what do you do, or what do you make?" And I had this panic because I was like, I can't fake playing the guitar, I can't fake painting like pictures, and so I just said I was a poet because I figured nobody can tell me that's not a poem. And like, and
Yes. It's a very subjective thing to try to judge on somebody else's behalf.
so so I lied and told them I was a poet, and then yeah, and then it turned out I was pretty good with my words. And after like copying you a lot or trying to copy listener and then put my own sort of like spin on it, I did okay. And I got to play a whole lot of shows, especially locally. And then I kind of got in this like church scene and started preaching around the world, and that was really awesome. But then I also kind of got like my ego was getting pretty big, and in the church like circuit, I was making a lot of money and but it wasn't very honest and
Doing
long
poetry or speaking?
yeah,
A
both.
little bit of
Yeah,
both.
it was
Yeah.
kind of like I would show up at these like conferences and they'd have me do a poem about whatever their topic was.
Yeah.
And so, I would custom make a poem or something like that. And then maybe I would preach the next day at their service. And, I affectionately call it the Christian entertainment circuit.
Uh-huh.
And, so I
I've
spent,
heard of it.
yes, yes. Right. And like it was cool, but like it just wasn't honest. And, I'm traveling by myself, not making money, cash checks, like just putting them in my pocket and no oversight or community. And it just got a little goofy. And, anyways, one of my mentors, in fact, two of them were like, "Yo, dude, you need to pump the brakes a little bit."
Hmm.
And I just listened. Honestly, I don't know why, but I quit that. And then I needed work because I was starting to fall in love with this girl who is now my wife. And then I opened a cocktail bar after that. And for the third time, things started going really, really good. I started doing these coffee competitions, became one of the very well recognized barista, ranked globally. Um, and then I started my own coffee company that USA Today was the top 10 coffee shops in the world. And I hit the top again. But during that was when things really shifted, bro. And I had a 6 week period where
Hmm.
my mom died, my son was born, and the coffee company doubled in size. We went from like 12 to 24 employees. And all of that happened in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And
What year?
it was like 7 years ago now. My kid's son is 7. So
Okay.
whatever year that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I survived for about 6 months trying to keep that ship together. And and then I woke up one morning and I had been sleeping for 8 days. And my wife would like bring me water. She had walked me to the bathroom a couple times, but pretty much I just was in bed.
Okay.
And and I woke up and
Long
some
time to be asleep.
a long time to be asleep. Everything turned off. And
Huh.
we
Did you
could
have
die.
any idea that that was coming?
No idea. I woke up. In fact, I thought it was like tomorrow. I thought it was the next day. So I was getting ready for work, and my wife was like, What are you doing?" And and she was like, "It's Saturday or Sunday or whatever. Like you don't go to work on this day." And so yeah, I had no idea. And I think it was more like I was in a trance, like I just like kept going to sleep, and I think I woke up in a little bit, but I literally don't remember it till this day.
Hmm.
So I went straight to my pastor's house, and he like cleared his schedule, spent half a day with me. He taught me how to cry, which is a great story I could tell maybe, but um and then after that he was like gave me $500 and said, "You need to go to therapy." And so then I started going to therapy. And then there was this moment in therapy though. Like my therapist was so dope and he got me back to work and got
Hmm.
me kind of centered again. And then after that though, I was just kind of like Levi. I was like, "Yo, this therapist is great, but he didn't have any language for the spiritual kind of side to this. Like I'd grown up a pastor's kid and I'm a pretty spiritual person and he just didn't have language for it. That wasn't in his training. That wasn't in part of who he was. And I started to grow increasingly frustrated. Like why didn't the Bible verses I was told were so important for me to memorize help me in my great suffering? And
Hmm.
why doesn't any of these stories as I was taught, how come they don't help? When I really needed this to help, they didn't help. And I ended up seeing a spiritual director to help me filter through all of that.
Hmm.
And if I was to be honest, that's what changed everything. And that's what really began to expand my spirituality, deepen my spirituality. And through that process, I began to realize how disenchanted I really was even being an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
And I had seen just this pattern through my whole life of doing things for accomplishing, trying to earn my belovedness by way of achievement. And I was doing it again in the coffee company. And I saw this picture while I was going through that from Scott the painter on my Instagram, um, and because I began to get so disenchanted, I was like, this dream that I had is not satisfactory, and there's something deep inside of me that I still haven't yet to realize. I'd done
Hmm.
great in baseball, done great in public speaking and poetry, done great in the hospitality industry, but there still was like a song inside me that needed to be sung. And I saw this picture on Instagram, and it was a dead bird that was like cut in half, and then inside that bird was an egg, and then the egg had a little chick inside of it that was singing a song. And the caption of that was like something like everybody has a song inside of him that needs to be sung, but few are willing to let what needs to die in order to sing the song.
Hmm.
And I knew at that moment I had to leave the coffee company. And so literally that
Wow. So
minute,
that was like how it came, like the
yes,
thing that, okay, it was that specific. It
it
wasn't
had been,
like, oh yeah, I resonate with this, but don't know what to do with it. It was like,
yeah,
I'm leaving this.
yes.
Okay.
So I knew I was leaving that moment. And then I was like, well, but maybe it'll take a little while. And then I went and I looked at the operating agreement that I had signed many years ago when we started the coffee company. And it said that I would have to still work for 6 more months as an owner. So if I resigned, I would still need to work a 6 month transition plan. And I had a full panic attack thinking about working at the coffee company for 6 more months. And so that night, I wrote my resignation letter and then started the process of selling my company to my partners. And so then that was another quitting. And when I quit that, I went and trained at a monastery for 2 years. I had to fundraise money. I had to tell all my friends, "Hey, I quit my job and I'm gonna go hang out at a monastery for 2 years. Can you help me pay my bills?" And uh, and so I did
Wow.
that. And I trained at a Benedictine monastery for 2 years to become a spiritual director. And now here I am. And for the last almost 6 years, um, I've been a spiritual director and I've worked part time as a pastor. And as of last Sunday, I did my last quitting, my most recent quitting, which is I left the church that I had been pastoring at to go full time doing spiritual direction and spiritual work. And so
Okay.
now here I am after
That
another
is
big
new.
quitting.
I
I
didn't even know that.
Yep. So I just announced it to the congregation on Sunday, which was an incredibly difficult thing to do. But yeah, people change and people expand, and that's just not where I am to be anymore. And so
Yeah.
another quitting, I just quit a whole bunch of stuff. That's kind of how I got here, quitting a whole bunch.
I love that. How you said that it was really hard. What was the hard thing about telling the church that? I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, I would imagine I'm at like relationally, it's the end of something. It's worth grieving.
Yeah.
But was there a particular thing that
Yeah.
felt rough?
Yeah. I mean, when you serve in this kind of pastoral role, um, there's a couple of things that are rough. First of all, when you're in a role like that, people perceive you to be some sort of way. And I think one of the hard things is like who I am at my core isn't always what I was perceived to be. And so I think, even though inside I didn't necessarily always feel like I was who they thought I was. And so because I love them so much, I need to be a lot more honest with them. And so I think first of all, what was hard is kind of when you really are pastoral, when you're not just speaking on a stage, but you're involved in their lives and you're doing weddings and funerals and you show up at their house when there's a miscarriage or somebody's in the hospital, like the perception, even though I never promised I would be there forever, there is this sort of like expectation that you're going to be there for a long time. And so I
Hmm.
think to just disappoint people was so hard. And the trust, I think, Levi, that these just wonderful, lovely people put in you to
Mm-hmm.
help steward their life, really. Again, hospitals and divorce and marriage and babies, like the trust there is just so deep. And so, um, I just found, like for example, I was just a couple weeks ago, I was given this recovery coin, and it has an infinity symbol on it. And there was a guy earlier that I've been mentoring at the church for the last like 3 or 4 years, and he'd been in and out of prison and addiction and stuff, um, and I had been working with him, helped him get some jobs, and we were working on planning how he was going to get a new job and buy a house and stuff. And he had gotten murdered, and so I walked through. I mean, I did the funeral with his family and was walking through his whole community with him. And so they gave me his infinity coin, meaning he's going to be sober forever now, so he doesn't need another coin. And it's like those relationships that I've been building for so long, and that things are going to change.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just hard,
Yeah.
and even though I am changing and I have changed, it doesn't take away just these deep relationships. And so
Yeah.
I think it's just hard to disappoint people,
Yeah. I do
and
know.
I disappointed a lot of people, I think. And
Yeah.
even though like you can still hurt people and it's not malicious, like I didn't maliciously hurt them, but I think I did hurt them. And it's
Mm-hmm.
true. And then to experience the ways everybody grieves, right? People were angry at me and people were sad and scared and just very real grief stuff. And so all of that made it just really, really hard.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is it too personal a question to ask what the catalyst for your move forward felt like?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it feels liberating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, people, especially in such a polarized landscape, expect, I think, first of all, a pastor to be something. And most often they want a pastor to be their projection of something. And I just am not that. I think one of the things my therapist, Krista, has been so good at helping me discover about me, and this is why I'm so good at helping other people do this, is that at my core, I'm a seeker.
Mm-hmm.
More than being a theologian, more than being a good helper, even though I'm a really good helper, I am a
Sure.
seeker.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in my seeking, and my oscillations between what I think and what I believe and what I'm learning and what I read, um, I might even encourage people to be that. And what people might need is from a pastor or in that particular job, in that particular vocation, which has specific boundaries.
Yeah.
Tyler in his Enneagram fourness, and you know, it just didn't fit anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think, there's this I'm gonna butcher this quote, but in the Gospel of Thomas, in the Gnostic Gospels, there's this quote about how if you, more or less paraphrasing, if you don't share what's within, so if you share what's within you, it will give you life.
Yep.
And if you don't share what's within you, it will kill you.
Yep.
And I think because I've had to play a particular role, there is lots that I've known to be true. That because of the role and me trying to honor that role for those people, I've not been able to overflow everything outside of me that I
Mm.
think I was meant to share. And I think it was killing me. I think it was really freezing me and paralyzing me from being everything that I think I could be and want to be.
Mm.
Um, and I don't think I've been able to help people to my fullness according to the ways in which I was designed to help people. It's not knocking on pastors. I'm
No.
just not one.
Yeah.
And I am something different. And I've evolved into that thing. And so I can't live, I think, underneath that title for
Mm-hmm.
as much as I admire it. I mean, I'm like a fourth generation pastor. And so to not do it's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I am something different and people change. And I think one of the coolest things I'm so excited to teach the people at the church upon my exit is that it's okay to change.
Yeah.
And I think good pastors show through their life. more than through their teaching, more than, and so I think it's my job to maybe show them through my life that it's
Hmm.
okay to change and move on. And so I think the catalyst is that I've changed, that I've evolved, and that, my wife and I are up to some new things, which is really
Nice.
exciting. And I want to do more spiritual direction, and I want to write, and I want to get my books out, and I
I
want
want
to,
you to get your
yeah,
books out too.
yeah, yeah, me too. So, so we're getting there, and yeah, I've changed because we
Yeah.
all change.
Yeah. Speaking of butchering quotes, there's a Finley. We go back and forth about him a lot, but
Mhm,
he had I remember he had something about like it said something to the degree of like the gift of the spiritual director for the directee is to model for that person,
mhm,
or is to naturally be the model for
mhm.
the kind of life that the person hopes is possible.
Mhm.
And so when I hear you talking about change
Yep.
as someone who finds change difficult and really values it at the
Mhm.
exact same time,
Yeah.
I think that that is a really beautiful thing that you
Yeah.
get the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
Are you still going to be functioning in that role in any way for church, for folks at the church, or is it going to be more of like you go in a different direction with it, or what?
Yeah, so the aim moving forward is I'm going to continue my private practice. And so yeah, so my private practice will be functioning like it always has, which means I don't meet with everybody in my private practice. Like my gifts need to align with your needs in some way.
Yeah,
And that funnel is pretty big, but I don't say yes to everybody.
yeah,
Because I'm not always the best for you. I will always help you find somebody. Um, so yes, I will be available. In fact, my spiritual direction schedule hopefully will be more available. It's a lot of weeks right now to get on my calendar, and I don't love that. So hopefully there'll be some more availability. Plus, one of the other things, Levi, that is the lifestyle of a pastor is brutal.
mm,
And I'm just so excited. I got two little kids, and
yeah,
my wife is so awesome, and just to not have the pastor's lifestyle is cool. So all that to say, I'm gonna have way more availability to meet with people, with the right people, but
yeah,
it's all gonna be through my private practice,
yeah,
rather than just kind of meeting for free with everybody.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, I have a question for you, and I find myself asking people this question a lot because do I want the preface at the front? I feel I would love to hear what your definition of spirituality is.
Hmm. Hmm.
I and I will give the why.
Hmm.
Um, you've articulated yourself as a spiritual person, a seeker, all of these different kinds of things. Spirituality is in vogue, and sometimes I get this feeling that it's a junk drawer word, but
Hmm.
I know that it's not, and I know that it's valuable, and I know that it's so at the heart of what you love and what you
Yes.
desire to be able to live and give.
Hmm.
um, how would you articulate what spirituality means to you, and how you would
Hmm.
work from it?
Yeah. I think in short, to be spiritual is to be alive.
All
And
right.
so I think spirituality is existing. Um, and I think as long as we have breath, we're spiritual. And I think all things that engage with breath and air and sun yeah, to be alive is to be spiritual. Um, Now I think the degree to which we are awake to how alive we are is very different. And I think when I categorize myself as being a spiritual person, it means that I pay a lot of attention to how awake I am. I don't think everybody is paying attention to how awake they are, and that's okay. It's not better or worse. I don't see it as like an ascension of some kind. It's more of just the ways we choose to exist. And I am of the disposition though where I want to pay attention and and honestly, it feels like a curse sometimes. And I think you probably feel that way too,
Mm-hmm.
of just like it would be nice sometimes to not be so ethereal, to not be so like just questioning everything.
You mean you don't love living in a constant existential crisis? You know, it's not the coolest thing for you and your body. What?
Exactly. I mean, and yet I can't not do it.
Yeah.
I've tried to not be spiritual. And so what I mean when I say I think we all are spiritual. I think spirituality is just being alive. For me, seeking is trying to say, okay, where is the life in all of this? And
Hmm.
which, when I say life, I think I also mean love. I think I also mean goodness. I also mean God. And so, where is God in this? Where is the love in this person, in this story? And we could, expound that in any particular place, right? In my own therapy. Okay, where is God? Where is love? Where is goodness in that? In my relationship with you, in how do I parent? Where is the divine? Where is the life? And so for Mr. Rogers to say, look for the helpers, right? That's a
Hmm.
spiritual practice. For somebody to practice breath work because it might help them heal, that is a spiritual practice. To try and eat less fast food during the week because you're just trying to lose a few pounds is you're chasing life. You're chasing life. To get a
Yeah.
tattoo because you just want to feel alive and be a little different, or because you want to join a group and you want to be part of something, also life. Um, yeah, and so I think to pursue life is to be spiritual, and I think
Hmm.
being spiritual is just being alive. And I think that some pursue that awareness of how alive they are more than others, and so that's where some people are more spiritual than others. So yeah, maybe it's a junk drawer word, but I don't think it has a choice but to be, because if it really is spirituality, it's a lot of things. And so I think
That's
it
beautiful.
can be a lot of things.
No, I appreciate that. I think that that's I there are a lot of words that I feel like are junk drawer words that also I want them to retain the meaning that they can sometimes lose if I hear them over and over and over again, and uh, it feels it's interesting because at times I think I want more specificity and it can feel somewhat nebulous, but I think
Mhm.
that a lot of that has to do with me wanting to
Yeah.
have my mind wrapped around
Mhm.
things that my mind cannot
Yeah.
wrap around. Do you I mean so you kind of talked about the life, the goodness, like are there certain aspects of when you see something, this is how I would quantify that. Like, okay, this if you're intentional to that practice of where is God here? Um, are there like I've been toying with this doorways to God thing. You and I
Mhm.
have both done that back and forth. Like, okay, that there's a sense of like emergent aliveness happening here. Is that a felt sense? Is that an idea that crosses your
Mhm.
mind? Is it um what kind of noticing is that like for you?
Yeah. I think it's I mean my mind first goes to Levi that it's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
So you practice seeing it. And the more you practice, the more you know what is it and what isn't it. And so I think for me, like it starts and with like people that I'm working with, and this can be frustrating, it can be very scary, and there could be a little bit of like wounding that might happen in this, but maybe it's just kind of the tax you have to pay. But you have to practice trying to see God in all the things. And so it starts by kind of assuming God is in everything, which by the way, God is, you know, but there are places where we might notice it more. And so for me, it's kind of like I'm going to try and say, okay, maybe God is in this red light that I'm stopped at or not. I don't know. But like if God was here, where are they? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, maybe that feeling wasn't so there wasn't much there. But then I have this other feeling when I'm at a stop sign and I find a sense of peace or calmness or clarity, or I find this unction, what the Jesuits would call a consolation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, that's what that feels like. And then you just make a little tick in your mind. You say, okay, that's what that felt like. And then you get more used to it over time. I didn't know what memes you thought were funny, but I sent a bunch. And then we start to find which ones that are for you. And then there's other ones I send to my brother because
Yeah.
I've practiced. I've practiced getting to know you. Um, and so I would say that, it makes me think of like maybe one of my favorite stories that teaches us what contemplation really is in Exodus when Moses and the burning bush, and we kind of know that story, but he was kind of at a low point, and he was working for his wife's dad, which is kind of shameful. He was a shepherd, which is definitely shameful, you know, and he was living in royalty and whatever. Now he's out in the woods being a shepherd, and then he sees this bush that's on fire and it's burning, and it doesn't burn up. And as we hear the story, right, he goes up to the bush and he hears God say his name, and then God takes him toward his destiny. But my favorite piece in that story is, and I can't remember the verse, but it's in Exodus 3 where it says, "When Moses looked, comma, then God spoke."
Mm.
Which to me says it was upon the curiosity of Moses that he then heard God say his name. And so
Mm.
to me, it's like, okay, I practice being curious.
Mm.
All right, God, where are you at? Are you in this bush? Are you in this person? Are you in this money? Are you in this movie? Are you in this meme? Are you in my kids? Are you in this argument with my wife? Are you, okay, God, where are you? It very easily could have been one of the things that's interesting about that story as well. A rabbi taught me this a couple years ago, how shepherds would often be together in a big field. Like there's only so many fields, there's a lot of shepherds. So if you would think about like if you were at a campsite, it wouldn't have been unusual, say if you and I went camping, to go see many different campfires. There could have been many bushes on fire, and they would often burn those bushes to start their campfires. So it
Mm.
wasn't like it was a giant anomaly in this
Mm.
story. It was something he would have seen at work. Shepherds saw bushes on fire all the time. So instead of thinking it's some like mystical experience, it's much more like he was a barista and somebody complained about his drink and
Uh-huh.
he was curious and saw God at the cafe because shepherds see campfires all the time.
Huh.
My point is, we practice being curious and we look, and the more you practice, the more you learn. So, what does it feel like? I don't know. You'll learn it as you practice.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that I learn to trust my soul when I am in alignment. So if I'm doing
Okay.
my practices and I'm in a good headspace,
Yeah.
I trust the thing that I think. I trust the thing that I feel. If I have been overeating and I didn't get in the cold and I've not done breath work and I haven't read any holy words, then I'm not as fast to trust my instinct.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it comes down to my practice and trusting that when I'm in alignment, when I see God or hear God or feel God, I'm pretty quick to assume that it is. But
Mm.
if I've been on one for whatever reason
Yeah.
and I'm in a
Yeah.
mood, then I take a little bit more time to assume that it is God.
Okay.
So you get really curious, you practice, and when you practice, you learn. So I guess what I'm saying, I wouldn't be a good spiritual director if I told you how it feels. You need to learn how it feels for
Sure.
yourself.
Sure.
But I think that's universally true. I can tell you that I know what it feels like because I've practiced, and that's true for me. Um, yeah, because I've
Okay.
practiced.
I love that. On your practices, because I know, I mean, I remember I was looking through our texts earlier when you were talking about maybe getting the Wim Hof certification, when you
Mhm.
started at least at the very least, I don't know how long you've been doing the ice baths, but at least
Yep.
posting them more and make it like making it known, hey, this is a part of who Tyler Hill is.
Yep.
Um, what what was it about the Wim Hof work that really drew you in,
Yes.
and how and since we're talking, since you mentioned that as a practice in relation to these questions about spirituality,
Mhm.
what do they have to do with it? And you talked about them having something to do with alignment. So what is yeah, what does that look like for you? How often are you engaging in these practices? And
Mhm.
you're starting to lead people through
Yep.
retreats with this kind of work as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm familiar with a lot
Sure.
of it, but I will
Mhm.
talk to people all the time who are like, "What? You get into an ice bath? What the
Yes.
hell's the matter with you?"
Totally.
Like it's like there's plenty of more woo woo people like you and I who are like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, you do the breath work, you do the ice bath," but what has it been like trying to like do the work you do and bring
Mhm.
practices like that into it?
Like the great saint Rob Bell says, we always need a proper amount of woo. So there's
Yes.
woo and then there's woo woo, but we need a good amount of woo.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Levi, I love telling this story because especially in I think the spiritualities you and I come from,
Mm-hmm.
and especially even in the West, we are so disembodied. I did not come to the Wim Hof method because I was looking to become spiritually enlightened or because I knew it would impact my mental health or my spiritual health. I actually came to it because I was sick, because my body was sick. And I love this story because what I pursued through trying to make my body healthy actually led me to some of the practice that has awakened me spiritually and connected me with Christ and God in ways that I had never had before. I'll tell you the story, but it also reminds me I was in a couple years ago, I was in this interfaith conference and I got to sit with this Buddhist monk. And he was telling me, he's like, I love Christians. And he said, you are so good at building communities and you're really good at taking care of the poor, but I don't understand why you guys don't take care of your bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the most unhealthy religion that I know of. And I was like, dang, that's like really interesting. And at the time I was actually really overweight and was not very healthy and drank a whole bunch and whatever, but and that's always stuck with me. I came to the method. Growing up, I had chronic migraines, and starting in like middle school and going into high school, I would have a migraine once or twice a month. And then growing up through that whole story that I told, I would end up in the coffee shops, and I would have migraines once a week and they were so bad that I would have to sometimes go and I can remember being at the cocktail bar and I would have to go lock myself in a closet when I was having a migraine. And in the service industry, when you're running a really busy bar, to just miss a bartender all of a sudden is like super not cool. And I was just letting so many people down. And I would go to the doctors and they're just like, and as is the case with migraines for a lot of people, they didn't know what to do and they kept giving you medicine and nothing was working and I would just try to figure it out. I ended up having a guest who had Lyme's disease and she had known because she was kind of irregular about me disappearing all the time at work. And she said, "Listen, dude, there's this weird thing that's like," and at the time it wasn't very popular, but she says it really helps me with my symptoms. And it's this guy Wim Hof, and maybe you want to give it a try. And at the time, he wasn't famous yet. He like hadn't been on the big podcast, and so he had this like really poorly written book that like is not in circulation anymore. And I like downloaded the PDF, and it was really confusing. And but you get the gist of it. This like breathwork protocol, and you get in the cold, and then mindset. You do these mindset techniques. So in short, what the Wim Hof method is, for those who don't know, it's a combination of a breathwork practice. Um, Regular and gradual cold exposure and mindset cultivation. So I started taking cold showers. And after about 6 days, I recognized that my migraines were not as intense. And
Mm-hmm.
over the course of 6 months, my migraines completely went away after doing the breath work and some type of cold exposure every day. So the truth is, got to the method by way of physical health, just trying to get rid of my migraines, and it worked. My migraines went away. So of course I kept doing it. But then
Yeah.
what we began to see was like my wife kept just noticing. She was like, "Yo, dude, like your depression is not as like aggressive as it used to be."
Hmm.
And on the days where maybe because I'm not perfect, like there are days where I miss out on the cold, and if you don't stay in routine, sometimes I'll go a couple weeks without it, and she'll be like, "Yo, dog, I can tell, like I know because
Interesting.
I'm on one,
Yeah.
and I'm just a little more cynical, and I'm a little less clear-minded, and all of these things." And so all that to say, what I was drawn toward for my physical health ended up really enhancing my mental health.
Hmm.
And then when I started, like, just I was happier, I felt a little bit more aligned and awake. During the breathwork practice, you have these moments where you hold your breath. And I think that is what taught me about meditation for reals. There'd be these moments where I wouldn't breathe for 2 and 3 and 4 minutes, and I would enter into this spiritual space that I had never gone into before.
Hmm.
And that's when I really began to understand silence and meditation. So, all that to say, I got there by way of physical health. And then by entering into my body, it really had awakened me to all these other ways I can connect with God and be healthy. So, as I teach it to
Yeah.
other people, what's interesting is people come to it for so many different ways. They might come to it because this guy's famous and he's interesting. They might
Yeah.
come to it because they have chronic illness. They might come to it because it helps you perform better in business and life and sports and whatever. People come to it for all sorts of reasons, but usually they stay because it helps in other ways they didn't think. And yeah, so for me, the protocol is pretty simple. I mean, I wake up and I do the Wim Hof method breath work protocol most days, probably 6 days out of 7. And then during the fall and winter, I jump outside into my cold plunge. So I'm not like rich. I don't have a fancy one. I just have a 100-gallon horse trough. So like today I was able to go in because it's cold enough outside. And then all winter long, because I live in Colorado, I get in the cold plunge. And now it's kind of a seasonal thing. When it gets summer, I'm like, maybe it's time for a break. And I kind of just unite with the seasons.
Yeah.
And so then I just take cold showers all summer. And but it's fall time, so I get to jump in the cold again, and it's really, really fun. And I get to jump in a lot, the other ice baths as well, just because I lead workshops and then we just fill it up with ice. But for my regular practice, when I can do the plunge, I do the plunge. When I can't do that, I take a cold shower.
Yeah. You talked about, there was something interesting to me that you said where you talked about like how doing the breath work practice, dropping into this different kind of space or consciousness or whatever,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, being the thing that really started to, you said something about, oh, then I really started to get meditation, or then I really
Yep.
started to get
Mhm.
silence. Um, did that, I mean, not as though you had no concept of it, but you talked to, I mean, you made reference to iterations of religion and spirituality that you and I grew up in. You've talked to
Mhm.
multiple times about expanding spirituality. You made some of those comments. So,
Yep.
um, did did practice precede and lead into some of the seeker energy that you talk about embodying, or were you sort of like on that tip
Mhm.
prior, and then this sort of
Yeah.
was the experiential component that
Yeah.
the language could
Mhm.
all finally find a home in?
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I could answer that in two ways. I think when I look at the totality of my life, I've always been a seeker. So it's never mattered. I've always been so curious. I grew up, my house was in between two churches. So the house I grew up in Salida, Colorado, my house was in the middle. And if you're looking at the front door of my house, to the left was the Baptist church where my dad was a pastor. And then to the right was the Catholic church in town. And so I literally grew up in between a Baptist church and a Catholic church. And I can remember there's two stories that I think kind of speak to this. First of all, talking about Rob Bell.
Mm-hmm.
early on in the Rob Bell days, he already in some of the Baptist circles was a little bit out there, believe it or not,
Hmm.
before he got exiled or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would sneak the Numa DVDs into my room and I would hide them because I was so
Okay.
intrigued by that. And
Yep.
so even there, I was starting to seek outside, what I was given. But I also remember, bro, looking outside my window at Mass when Mass would happen because I could see the church outside my window, and everybody'd be leaving, and the priest would be out there in his robes, and I was just like, that looks so cool. And I'm so interested in that. And I remember trying to do sleepovers with my friends who were Catholic, hoping that I could go to Mass on Sundays. And then my dad would
Hmm.
say, "You got to come to church." Um, and so I always was curious from the very beginning, but then, I edged in and out of like fundamentalism and things. And, um, and always still just loved being a Christian. And I still do. Like, I really appreciate the Jesus teachings and the Bible and so many great Christian, teachers and leaders. But I went in and out of all of that. And, but again, I think, Levi, there was this point where the spirituality that I practiced at the time could not help me in the suffering.
Yeah.
And it offered no help.
Yeah.
And that's when I really needed to seek because I needed something to help.
Yeah.
And so for me, my big expansion came by way of trying to find a practice and a spirituality. And thankfully, it was in the tradition that I was given. I just had to look at it in an entirely different way, but I had to seek for something because I had no choice. What I was holding didn't cut it. So I had to look for something else.
Yeah.
Um, and so there was this era after my mom died where the seeker energy was ignited. The
Uh-huh.
gasoline was lit and I was then on fire. Um, and the sisters at the monastery really were, and my spiritual director, who was also trained at that monastery,
Okay.
were the ones who really cultivated that. Um, and I began to develop a language for things that felt true. So I think it went kind of
Hmm.
like this. They would teach me things, and it wasn't like I learned much,
Hmm.
but I learned so much. Every time they would teach me something, I was like, "Oh, I've always known that that's true." But I never had a word for it, or I never had a parable for it. I never had a metaphor for it.
Yes.
But every single time they said something, I was like, "Oh, of course it's like that. Of course I am like that. Of course the world is like this."
Yeah.
Even though I could never articulate it at the time. And so that's when things really began to expand. But I still, in a very Western way, and even my monastery, even though it is very practice heavy, I still had a lot of language and not a lot of experience.
Hmm.
And like Richard Rohr says, you can't think yourself into new ways of living. You have to live yourself into new ways of thinking. And so there still came a point, bro, where no
Hmm.
matter everything that I knew about silence, I had
Yeah.
to do it. I had to
Hmm.
I had to do it.
Hmm.
And so sure, when I started doing breath work and I actually was able to go into my interior castle, I had language for it. I knew the practices, but I still had to do it. So I never
Yeah.
knew it until I did it. Um, I was always seeking, but I think I eventually landed on finding the practices that work for me, because
Hmm.
I had been seeking for so long. But that didn't mean I
Hmm.
knew much. It was only after I started practicing that I
Totally.
began to know it.
Huge difference between explaining and understanding the idea of a thing and
Yeah.
living the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you talk a lot about belovedness.
Mhm.
Um, is that where you discovered what you would call belovedness?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
One of the core things that my spiritual director, when I left therapy, and also I love therapy. I was at my therapist this morning. Shout out
Uh-huh.
Krista.
Uh-huh.
What's up? Um, but when I left therapy the first time, um, the very first thing my spiritual director did is he shared this mantra. When I'm standing in my belovedness, I have nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to fear, nothing to gain. And I was like, that sounds awesome and is bullshit. Like, that's just not
Interesting.
real.
Huh.
Like, how could you live a life with nothing to prove, nothing like that is not real, David.
Okay.
And I'm sure he'll listen to this. Love you, David. And but it sounded nice. I mean, and
Yeah.
to like fast forward, I mentioned all the quittings that I've done in my life, right?
Hmm.
And we all got mama trauma, right? You know, my mom was sick for my whole life,
Hmm.
and she got all the attention, and rightfully so, by the way. Like it wasn't wrong. And my dad, to be fair, like he was incredible. Like he tended to my mom so well.
Hmm.
I mean, was faithful as all get out. And then he also worked at the church. And again, in this Western sort of like pastoral thing, like the church often had a big priority as well, which
Yeah.
left me a lot of the times in the background. And again, a lot of it was my dad's faithfulness to my mom, caring for all these people. But like, I often felt like I wasn't interesting or smart or good enough to be paid attention to.
Mm.
So if I can be the most interesting guy in the room, if I can communicate well, if I can get attention. So I think, you know, whether it was baseball, whether it was poetry, whether it was having the coolest coffee shop in town, they all were these mechanisms of trying to prove that I belonged. Nothing to prove. I always had something to prove. Nothing to lose. I had everything to lose. If I'm not a famous poet, then what?
Yeah.
You know, or if I'm not a, whatever. And so what I did was I said to myself, I just made this deal with myself. I said, if I could find one moment in my life where I knew belovedness to be true, then I could figure out how to live that the rest of my life.
Hmm.
But if up to this point in my like late 20s or mid 20s, that belovedness was never been experienced yet, then there's no way I will ever know it. Because in
Ah,
my mind,
that
I
was
was,
sort of the fatalistic
yeah,
kind of response to the
yeah,
to David's
yes, the
mantra.
mantra. So if
Hmm.
I can find one time in my whole story where I knew belovedness, then I could stoke the fire and experience it once again. But if up to this point I've never experienced it according to his definition, then F it, you know, I don't know what, but this
Yeah.
just isn't real. I searched my story and searched my story, and it felt like always there was something to prove.
Hmm.
Um, right, which is the story for most of us, right? Like we all know Henry Nouwen's three big lies. You know, I
Yeah.
am what I have, I am what I do, I am what other people say about me. Those are all the ways we try to prove that we're beloved. And then I had a vision in being in the womb of my mom. And I'd never had a vision before. And I saw myself in the womb. And after the vision, I realized that in the womb, there is nothing to prove. There is nothing to lose. There's nothing to fear. There is nothing to gain. So not only did I recognize there was a moment in my story where I did know belovedness, not only was there that, but that was where I started,
Hmm.
which changed everything. You see, I was given a spiritual story that said I was born bad, that I was born a wretch, like the famous song says,
Yeah.
that I was born separate from God and needed all this retribution and all these duties and things to re kind of kindle this connection between me and God. And but what this experience showed me was that I wasn't born bad. I was actually born beloved. And if I'm born beloved, everything changes. Hmm.
Hmm.
And then I had to reconcile that with like the Bible and everything I had ever been taught. And yet, the more I went into the text, for example, I started to realize that even the text didn't affirm this born bad thing. This, in my book, I call it the story of separation.
Hmm.
Like that the Bible doesn't teach the story of separation. It actually does teach an inherent goodness. And all that to say, when I realized that I was born beloved, and that nothing can separate me from that love of God, then I actually don't need to live trying to prove anything anymore. And I can continuously live in the womb of God always
Hmm.
without anything to. And so when I'm at my best, I have nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to fear, nothing to gain. For example, so you asked me, Levi, how do you know when it's God?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm not trying to prove anything, if I'm not trying to, if I'm not scared, I'm going to lose, if I'm just myself, usually that's in alignment. And that's what belovedness feels like, just not having to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to fear. I'm not trying to impress anybody.
Your famous U2 background story song.
Yes, yes,
I haven't heard "Free Yourself to Be Yourself" more in my life
yes,
than
yes.
following you. You know.
Yes, if free your which gets to so much of it, right? Like if you free yourself to be yourself, if only you could see yourself. The aim is to not be something else. We have to be the us we were created to be, right? Augustine, he says, "Help me know myself so I can know you." And like, there's so many good quotes about it, but it's just like the more we get in tune with our birth nature, game's over. And
Huh.
Yeah. So belovedness, man, and that's really the core of my work, right? Like,
Yeah.
is just trying to get people to be in tune with who they were designed to be at birth, which often takes a giant undressing of
Yes.
all the stories and all the narratives. And then when we get back to that birth nature, I mean, Jesus loved the kids, you
Yes.
know, and and there is this childlike nature, this wonder, this woo that when we are closer to the womb. And man, there's so much in there, and we could get into it if you want, but like just the feminine nature of God and this womb-like nature. The
Yeah.
word compassion is,
Go where you want to go.
I mean, like I'll share one little thing. Like when we keep talking about like the womb and that
Hmm.
experience in the womb as a metaphor for belovedness, the word compassion in the Bible and the word womb is almost the exact same word. Rehum
Hmm.
and rachamim. The same rabbi that told me the burning bush story, he said that whenever we read the word compassion in the holy text, we can read it as being rewombed by God. So
Oh
whenever it
my
says
God, that's
God,
so beautiful.
yes. So whenever God shows compassion to them, right? They mess up, God had compassion on them. It's as if God is bringing them back into her womb, re-wombing us, which is to say, back into the place of belovedness.
Hmm.
So every time we see God or we see Jesus nurture, we see God show compassion. We see these examples. And then I think, there's a lot to be said for the Garden of Eden being a metaphor for the womb
Sure.
and all sorts of cool stuff. But the idea of belovedness, as you said, is really learning to say, okay, if I'm not, because again, if I'm not proving anything, then I get
Yeah.
to be myself.
Yeah.
And how liberating is that? And and so it's not
Yes.
belovedness is not just this like, oh, you are so loved and you can feel flowery all the
Sure.
time.
Hmm.
It's it's a liberating thing from being in the chains of having to prove our worth
Hmm.
and being bound to
Yeah.
that there's a very practical fruit that comes out of living as the beloved, which means we get to be free to be ourselves, to pursue our dreams, to pursue our passions, to love the way we were designed to love, to create the way we were designed to create, to help the way we were meant to help. And so there's a very practical element to it. It's not just about feeling some sort of way. It has radical. And I think that's why the more beloved I've been known, the more I've quit things.
Hmm. Hmm.
I keep letting go of all these things I've been using to prove my worth.
Yeah.
And then I get closer. Every time I quit something, I get closer, I think, to my original design. And I think I'm
Hmm.
closer than ever. And there's going to be more to quit, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one time 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I don't know. We got together in Colorado Springs. I was on the road. We had coffee the next morning and we were talking about letting go. and you said to me the you said something like, "Oh, you've let go of those things? Good. It's going to be harder to let go of the next one. It's going to
Mhm.
be harder to let go of the next one."
Mhm.
But and maybe that's been true.
Mhm.
I don't I mean I can I think it was more about the quality or the depth of the things that we discover
Yep.
that
Mhm.
are those kinds of chains, and less about like,
Yep.
oh, live your life of suffering or whatever. But
Yep.
it's really beautiful to hear
Yep.
the the resurrection on the other side of the death
Yeah.
story.
What's so funny
And the
about that?
disposition, like the
Yes.
energy behind it. It's not just like
Mhm.
now we've got a quippy testimony to have. It's like, no, there's like a fullness to the thing that
Yep.
you're articulating.
100%. And like what's so interesting there too is like it is harder and it's easier. So
Mm-hmm.
like it's harder because every new thing that I do is more in alignment with my divine design. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, pastoring at this recovery church which with a bunch of felons and addicts is very close to my divine alignment.
Yeah.
So to let go of this is brutal. And yet, because I've quit so many things, it also is one of my easiest quittings ever. And another way of
Yeah.
saying quitting is letting go. I think another way of saying it is dying. Like we are called to pick up our cross daily. I think that's what that means, right? This
Yeah.
death and resurrection, like you hinted at. So it is so hard because the more we do it, I think we always get closer to the things we love more. So on a soul level, it's harder, always harder. And yet, like I was doing this executive coaching with this group of people, and there's like this Amazon executive in the room, and he is asking me, "How are you so good at it?" And I was like, "Well, I've got a lot of practice." So in some ways, the first quitting was also harder,
Yeah.
and yet on a soul level, not so much because I'm just so in love with the work that I get to do.
Yeah.
But again, you got to practice, and you have to practice letting go, and we always have to let go.
I love your art. Just to send some praise your way. I love your articulation of belovedness because and it goes. It's David. Is that his name? The dude.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
David. David's mantra. Good job. Because it goes so because I think we can hear about belovedness too and think about it as yet one more thing that we have to put on.
Yeah.
And so the rewombing and the mantra itself to be like, no, this is not like it's the energy is not like, I want to be beloved, I want to be beloved, how do I be beloved, how do I feel beloved. It's like you talk we talk we've talked, you and I at least separately have talked a lot about like remembering, and I know that that's
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
not a new concept, but like one of the ways in which I experience something
Mhm.
akin to maybe what a Finley would call like a quickening, or the way that you're
Mhm.
articulating noticing, is being like, oh, this feels like remembering to me. This feels like a no, what one of the quotes that uh, well, I'm just never going to stop saying it, but I say it a lot. But
Mhm.
it comes from this poem by the poet William Stafford, and I heard John O'Donohue talk
Mhm.
about it. Um, I don't remember the entire thing, but one of the final lines that he just that in the poem says, um, "The things that you know before you hear them, those are you. That's why you're in the world."
Mhm.
And there's something of that to me to what you're describing, like you, the rewombing too. I just we had some texts back in 22 talking about the face that you had before you were born, and I saw your response to me on this quote being like, yes, that's the thing,
Wow.
it's beautiful.
Wow. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of like, my daughter, um, she was sitting on the couch and don't call anybody official, but she fell backwards yesterday off the couch and her brother kind
Uh-huh.
of kicked her off and even still, and this hurts sometimes as a dad, even if I'm the only one home, she always asks for mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think belovedness again, it's not something you put on. So often even in like our vices that maybe aren't all the way helpful, we're always just trying to recreate that feeling.
Hmm.
So my daughter is so quick to just go to mom. Why? Her mom doesn't love her more than me, I don't think. But there's a womb there.
Hmm.
And we are so quick, children are so quick to just go to the womb. And it's not complicated, it's just easy. And so to me, belovedness, even in many ways, again, it's just a remembering. All right, when I need this, how do I just go back to my mother?
Hmm.
How do I just go back to like and having a mom who was so sick, and I never got to like hold her all the way, and and like I was intimate with her body in ways that I shouldn't have been, in that like we had to clean her and take her to the hospital and carry her, and I mean, brush her teeth even like at the very end, and just things like that. And so my engagement with like the feminine, especially elder, was just so askew. And
Hmm.
that was one of the things that actually training at this monastery with all the sisters redeemed for me, was not only did I get to like be held by these women, but then I was also given these images of like the divine feminine, which again just takes me back to the womb and takes me back to the womb, um and it just is so special. Uh, and I think the more that we can have that nurturing God that embodies this womb like nature, the more we can really understand God's love to its fullness.
Hmm. How would you? We've I'm we've both been through some difficult stuff, um, loss and sickness and depression and real low lows and church. Like, there's plenty. You know, I'm interested in. You've taught again. This is sort of touching on a more expansive spirituality that you find yourself evolving into. I'm happy to hear more about that as well. But I'm as interested in the catalysts for that, as and maybe not even. I mean, you've shared so much of your story, and so maybe not even the specific things, but a lot of times I feel like one story that people have about pain is, well, they went through this and then they changed because there's hurt there, or because they don't want to touch this old thing. And sometimes that's true. There are definitely things that are still tender to touch, or things that I'm, personally still working through. But I also, without being pithy about the pain,
Mhm.
I wouldn't trade it for anything for the transformation that it has created in my life.
Yes.
And I'm interested in what you think about that. I know that we're both fans of Brene Brown, and I remember getting her. Actually, you may have told me that it was out, but it was the illustrated one, the
Yeah.
heart
Yeah.
one,
I think it's in my other office. Yeah, for
and
sure.
she has some interesting stuff to say about regret in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm. Yeah. I
that's
mean,
that's somewhat difficult. It's somewhat difficult for me at times because I mean, I have regrets about hurting others. I have regrets about things that I've, especially if it's brought, but but I can also look at these things as, and it's a fine line between being like, well, don't worry, it's all going to work out, and it just being this thing that ends up adding more insult to injury. But how do you feel about that in your life? I mean,
yeah.
what is that? What do you look on the
Yep.
journey?
Yeah.
What lens?
Yep. I mean, and to like, call the elephant in the room, right? We've both lost parents,
Yes.
right? You lost your dad when you were reasonably young.
Yep.
My mom was sick since I can remember.
Yep.
Um, and so there are these things that were catalysts of both our
Yep.
transformations.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think for me, there's a lot I could say, I suppose. You know, I mean, I think of course the death of my mom was my introduction to non-dualism
Okay.
in most ways. Um, and I would say first and foremost, like in a similar way, one of my biggest awakenings came when I really began to realize that two things could be true at once.
Mm,
One was that I would never wish my mom to have died. She died maybe 7 or 8 days before my son was born, so she never got to see me be a dad.
mm,
Um, and uh, and I hate that. I will always hate that. And now that I have a girl and she gets to see me be a girl dad, or
mm,
like she doesn't get to see me be a girl dad, like
yeah.
that, like there's something about that that hurts maybe worse. And I still hate that. Me learning how to do like even I'm trying to remember the other day, but there's just all these things that I wish I could do to call my mom and ask or to tell her, and it's just mom things. And and then like my other moms are sisters at the monastery who don't have kids, and so I can't call that. And I've got so many good women in my life, so many good women, but um I still hate that. 100% unequivocally hate it. I hate that my mom suffered her whole life. I hate that she didn't get to be who everything she wanted to be. I hate it. And I would not be this at all if she didn't pass away. I
Hmm.
think I'd be a pretty shitty dad, I think, if she didn't die.
Mm,
And maybe that's not a good way to say it, but I think if I didn't go through what I went through after she died,
yeah.
I'm not sure I'd still be married. Like me going, like I could very easily be an alcoholic, the way I would drink, doing the cocktail bar and all that stuff. Like, but going through that suffering has transformed me. A couple things I think, and if this isn't helpful, then you can ask the question again. But like, I do think Levi God is always speaking, always. People often will tell me, well, why does God only speak when bad things happen or whatever? And I
Mm,
think it's just that we turn the volume up. Out of pure
hmm.
necessity, we turn the volume up. But I believe the divine is always calling us to our fullness, to be aware of love, to be aware of ourselves and of our neighbor, to love our neighbor as ourselves. That message is always being broadcast. It just so
Mm,
happens that when we suffer, we turn the volume up on the radio. And when we turn the volume up, we hear. And I think in many ways that's what's happened. That's what happens to all of us. I don't think it's that
hmm.
complicated. We hear, and when we hear the divine flow calling us to to be the most full version of ourselves, then we start healing because we want to be that. And so I think we tend to just turn the volume up. Um, but until we need it, why would we? Why would we
Mm,
turn the volume up if we don't need to?
hmm.
Um, so again, I don't think that God does those things to us to make us turn the volume up.
Yeah.
I think those things happen. I mean, Richard Rohr, I heard him say it the other day. He was just like, we don't give randomness enough credit.
Yes.
Like shit just happens.
Yes.
God, it's not that God did it. It's not that God didn't do it. It just happens. And sometimes when things happen, we do turn the volume up. And so I love what happened to me since I've turned my volume up.
Mm,
And this thing that I think just randomly happened was the thing that helped me realize I needed to turn the volume up.
mm.
Finley, he has a quote, I think this is him, that says, God protects me from nothing and sustains me in everything.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yes.
In that, like, to be sustained through suffering is what has formed me.
Yes.
And I would suggest, and I think this is worth noting, you talk about junk drawer words.
Hmm.
Do you know what else is like suffering is when I run 50 miles
Yeah.
and it forms me.
Yeah.
It's not the same as suffering when my mom died. You know what
Right.
else is suffering? Reading a Richard Rohr book at the beginning and I don't understand it and it's really hard because I'm not that
Yes.
smart. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
also hard. That also hurts.
Yeah.
Doing a juice cleanse hurts. Like, all of these things hurt.
Yeah.
Um,
Hopping into an ice bath hurts, man.
it well, exactly. I mean,
Yes.
bro, that's exactly right. Never. I mean, that's part of why I do it.
I
Never,
know.
never, never do I enjoy that. And
Right.
yet, so suffering is so vast and so beautiful. It is always suffering to get up early. Eating a nice green chili is suffering a little,
Uh-huh.
but it's kind of worth it too. Um,
Oh yeah.
Getting up early to watch the sunrise. So I mean, suffering is, there's a lot there, but I think, and so I've had to learn to be okay that my mom died and fully grateful for it as well. And both can be true. And that then, Levi, has taught me so much more about God in so many other ways and having to engage in a non-dual way as much as I can.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. What does that mean? Practically.
Yeah. Yeah. Practically to be non-dual is to allow, I think I think the most practical way to be non-dual is to just leave people alone.
That's such, that's such a wonderful, that's such a wonderful, emphatic definition.
Like like just leave them alone. Like let your kid be on their journey. Let the person on
Mm,
the internet just say what they're gonna say. Like, why are we trying to control everyone and everything and every narrative and every story? Like,
yeah.
just leave them alone. Like, let it happen. Um,
Hmm.
so dualism, just having to hold on to one belief and clinch and hold on to it, to get a little more woo woo with it. Like, dualism is holding so tightly to your beliefs that your hands aren't open to receive the next gift from God.
Yes.
And when we're holding so tightly onto everything and it has to be this way or that way, that's what dualism is. It's black or white. Then we become so addicted, so infatuated with the this or that we miss out on the next thing that's here. Clenched fists can't receive new gifts. And so to be non-dual is to be open-handed and say, okay, this is what I think is true. And also, God is flowing, God is expanding. There's so much more beauty here. So I'm not going to just like shoot another bit of doctrine into my veins for the sake of feeling safe, but I'm going to be willing to read the doctrine and maybe even like it, maybe even love it, and
Mm,
see what else is here. But I
yeah.
think practically dualism is just control, trying to control other people, trying to control our politicians, trying to control the Bible, trying to control the Bhagavad Gita, trying to control our neighbors, trying to control our meditation, trying to control our mind, trying to control our story, trying to control our life. And that will just wound us. You know, growing up Protestant, the cross never had Jesus on it. And now
Yeah.
that I'm like diet Catholic, like, there's Jesus is like on it,
Yeah.
on the cross. And I think one of the best parts of that is that his hands are nailed open. And to
Mm,
me, I find a non-dual sort of picture in that. There's like a dualism in that the hands are on one side or the other and his arms are open wide, and yet there's an open-handedness in that as well. And I think that's
yes.
again, if that's the moment of like divine transformation, it happens with open hands, not
Mm,
with clenched fists, whether that's in war, fighting, idealism, fundamentalism, that sort of thing.
yeah. That's very good.
Thank
I
you.
like that a lot. I like that a lot. Um, man.
You should define it for a minute. What does how do you engage with
Oh my
non-dualism?
gosh. That's a good question. I really do love that definition. I remember my mom giving me Nowens with open hands.
Mhm.
My mom introduced me to such wonderful stuff, man. I mean,
Mhm.
she gave me she gave me Bell early on. She gave
Mhm.
me Merton's New Seeds of
Wow.
Contemplation, and that book was a catalyst for so much change in my life. Um, I have a long history of black and whiting the ineffable,
Mhm.
and um, to use the language of unlayering. I remember being actually speaking of now, and I remember years ago, probably 2017 ish, started going to therapy for the first time. And I had a therapist at the time who was friends with Now and at one point. And he was the first one before I heard anything about, releasing your loyal soldier or taking off your armor or any of these other metaphors that we have for it, where he talked about unlayering and taking these, this is a lonely ghost shirt, but it might say whatever belief thing that I need to and taking it off and taking it off and taking it off. His iteration of rewombing, I suppose. True self, false self kind of stuff. And so I think I think more of instances or experiences maybe that come to mind that have given me a picture of a non-duality that has quite simply just been the most spacious and liberative place that I've ever been in.
Mhm.
Um, and I think about my own maybe meditation practice or my own breath work was a huge thing for me as well, especially when I first discovered it years ago. And um, I had some, I'm stuck. I'm gonna be stuck on your open hands metaphor for a long time because I had these experiences in that you sort of. You remember that PD song where he talks about he like has the quip on breath work where he's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, did you get claw hands?"
Yes.
And so you get the claw hands and the whatever the word is called, and then I just remember at the end being like this all of this tension that had been there just
Mhm.
I get my breath back,
Mhm.
and um
Mhm.
it's dropping the fight to a certain degree.
Yes. Oh,
It's I don't know, some sort of allowing and also checking in with the places that don't want to allow and
yes.
allowing anyway, because
Yeah.
I don't hear you at any point in time saying that there aren't still things that come up inside of you that want to do that clinging. And
Absolutely.
I even think about Paul talking about letting, shaking, I don't know what the exact right, shaking off that which clings so tightly and this sort of putting on of the mind of
Mhm.
Christ.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
that none of that is succinct, but those are kind of some of the places that my
Yeah.
mind goes to when I consider what it is like to be held. I had an experience, and I keep having this. I mean, the lessons circle round.
Mm.
I think I'm holding on to some, or I think I'm done with the story, and then the story holds me. I think I'm going to say no to this, and then I can say no to that because I'm free
Yep.
to say no to that, and then I'm held anyway.
Mhm.
Um, I had a very beautiful experience at one point in time where I sort of visualized my mind letting go of all of the things that it
Mm.
constantly had to be sure of and being absolutely terrified that I was done for. It's just the loss of all identity, it's the loss of
Mhm.
every thing that keeps me safe, and then I'm falling, and then the camera angle zooms out and there's a hand underneath me, and it's just,
Mm.
oh my god,
Yes.
I'm I'm falling, and I don't know who says this. I don't I mean it's some. mystic dude, but he was talking about how like the bad news is it's something like the bad news is you're falling and about to hit the ground, or you think you're about to hit the ground.
Mhm.
The good news is that there's no ground. And it
Mhm.
was like it was that picture of just like this infinite spaciousness and such intimate heldness
Yeah.
there that yeah, in I
Mhm.
mean, I would love to hold on to those feelings
Mhm.
forever, and then
Mhm.
control plays a nice
Mhm.
different kind of ego game with you. But to be able to
Yeah.
have things like that to return to and
Yeah.
say, no, I know that there's a heldness that I exist within,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's
it's a
interesting. You
beautiful
you said
reminder.
you said dropping the fight.
Hmm.
And I find that to be so, so good.
Mm.
You can't be held if you're like fighting, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
and and children just want to be held,
yeah.
you know, and if you're fighting with your doctrine, if you're fighting with, I'll tell you one thing I'm leaving as a pastor, hopefully, is all the emails. Oh my gosh. But but so many people want to fight me, but they're
Mm.
not against me or whatever, you know, but it's just fighting to feel safe.
Yeah,
But if you fight, people will always punch back. And people will
yeah.
fight you back, and you won't ever actually be held and be safe. But when we can stop fighting, we feel safe. And maybe this image is too much, but this is a lot of my life because I use so much womb language. The baby never fights to really get out of the womb. Like it needs to be pushed out.
Hmm.
You know, there's not a fighting there. Like the baby just wants to sit and stay there. I think there's something to be said there as you're describing this, like being held. And it's like to be non-dual or to sit as a beloved. Like dualism is always fighting.
Yes.
But when we stop fighting, we can always find ourselves held.
Hmm.
And we got to stop fighting. Got to stop
Yeah.
arguing.
Yeah.
One of the
And
things I do.
it
Yeah.
is terrifying to do,
Yes.
to
Yes.
stop,
100%.
you
I
know.
mean, a very practical thing I do actually is on like I tend to get a lot of comments on YouTube about my theology and what people
Mm.
disagree with and I just delete them.
Interesting.
I just delete them every
Yeah.
time and I
I
don't and it's
love
like
that.
it's bad for engagement and like
Yeah.
I'm not growing and that's why I don't have a book deal yet because I won't argue with people on the internet. But yeah, I just delete them. And it's like a practice of non-dualism for me. Even though it's just, you know, whatever, I just delete them.
It's very in line with, I remember when you started sharing more on social, because you used to not share ever
Mhm,
on social.
mhm.
And then you started sharing more. I was like, what are you doing? And you all you said was posting and ghosting.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I'm posting and then never looking at any of it again, but
Mhm.
I've got to play the game and do this thing for whatever,
Yes.
But
Yep. Still do that.
yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that.
Mm.
Yeah, the drop the fight thing. I remember hearing. I wish I could. I mean, it is sort of become a little bit of a mantra of mine as well. But I remember hearing that. Um, it may have been in Tattoos on the Heart. It may, and it wasn't even around exactly what we're talking about. It wasn't Gregory Boyle talking about non-duality exactly. Although I kind of feel like he swims in those waters. But yeah, he just said he was talking about some of the work that he was doing in LA, and he just said something about like it's one of his little quick quips to something else. It was something like in the a Buddhist friend of mine, she just drops the fight. She just stops arguing altogether. And it was like him trying to trying to bring the reader into this moment of like we're existing
Mhm.
and doing the best that we can and
Mm.
doing the best that we can to take
Yes.
care of one another in the process.
Yes. Mm.
You know,
Mhm. Mm.
but I know we're both fans of that guy.
Big.
Big.
Gregory Boyle, come on.
Why are you? What's your
Mm.
fanship?
Mm. Of Greg?
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Father Greg? I mean,
What drew you into that work?
yeah, I mean, I think you know, I mean, I just read the first book and it was just so enlightening. And my spiritual director had me already reading Jesuit stuff before I knew of Greg. Um, so I was already reading Martin, Steve Martin. That's his name, right? Steve Martin? That's Steve Martin, Colbert's priest guy. Anyways,
Yeah, I think you're
but there's
right. It
that book
sounds weird because
called
there's the comedian Steve Martin, and now I'm confused.
James Martin. I can't remember. I'm trying to find it, but anyways, had already read the Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, and
Hmm.
I still go back to that, especially in seasons of discernment, because the Jesuits are so good at discernment, um and there's a chapter on like Jesuit discernment. So, anyways, I had already known that. I was already familiar with Jesuit spirituality. Um, and I always do my silent retreats. I do about 11 days of silence every year. And and I do that at a Jesuit retreat center. But anyways, so I was already familiar with that. And so then when I read his book, the first one, it was just so in alignment with so much spirituality that was helpful for me. But then, I mean, I've spent the last 7 years at this church,
Hmm.
working with addicts, prisoners, gang members, drug dealers, folks
Hmm.
who don't have homes, and so it just was so much in alignment with who I try to be. And there are just so many times. And the truth is Dr. E, who is the founding pastor of the church that I'm leaving.
Hmm.
He is another Greg Boyle in so many ways. In fact,
Okay.
he's kind of writing his sort of version, called the Ragamuffin Circus. That's kind of
Okay.
like his own Greg Boyle book. But the point is like it just I became such a fan in that, like, um, when I was doing my work, I had somebody to sort of channel. I had a saint that was like, they get it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I got Mother Teresa in my office at work, but like, she wasn't like giving people Narcan in her office like I do
Right.
sometimes.
Yep.
And but I think Greg gets it, right? And I mean, I've done more funerals than weddings,
Mm.
and in way more. And so, anyways, I felt kindred with him. I've written him a few letters. I haven't gotten one back, but yeah, I think we're kindred spirits, and um, yeah, and then just continuing to say, okay, I think another thing is sometimes it's just really hard for me to be a Christian,
Yeah.
and and yet as much as I've wanted to not be one, I can't not be one,
Yep.
and I actually love being one. And
Yep.
so to find these people that embody their Christ following in such a real way gives me permission to be one too. And so
Yeah.
I think that's why I need the roar, like the Roars and the Mertens, um, and the Greg Boyles and the Rachel Held Evans
Hmm.
and all of them to help me keep being me, because I don't think I can't stop being me. I was made
Yep.
this way, so I got to figure that out, and so people like him help me do that.
Yeah. I really love that. Can you, I can, if I remember a conversation that you and I had. I don't remember exactly what I asked you.
Mhm.
It's some metaphysics of God. Is God one? Is God
Mhm.
three? Is God, whatever our
Mhm.
but when you said sometimes it's really hard for me to be a Christian,
Mhm.
like that was, it reminded me of that. And
Mhm.
you had something to say to me then about the relationality of God being something
Mhm.
that's very attractive to you in terms of
Yeah,
Trinitarian relationship.
yeah, for sure.
What do you One, what is the hard thing? What's hard about it?
Yeah.
And two, what's there's the non-dual. You hate it, you love
Yep.
it.
Yep. Yeah, I think what I hate is what it, I hate that it's in a community, I think.
Okay.
And I think everybody in any community has this. So this is not just like in our little evangelical subculture and stuff, like I think one thing that we don't know, or that people who are maybe evangelicals or whatever or post-Christian don't ever talk about, is that like we're actually not that special. This is actually everything to do with being in community, which is to say people in the community, it's hard to be in community.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to be in a community that can be so divisive, that can be so hateful, that can see the poor or see an immigrant, um, that can see somebody who looks so different than them and then just be so hostile, right?
Mm.
Um, and I think to come from a place that has a version of it that again, I mean, I that says I was born bad. Like I could not imagine looking at my kids when they're born and say, "Amazing Grace, you're such a wretch, little kid."
Yep. Yep.
Like, how can I love a religion that gave me that message? Like, screw that. Like, I don't want to touch that with a 1,000 mile pole.
Yep.
And yet, I'm also part of a religion that when my mom was dying, the same church that taught me some of those messages and kind of acts in that sort of way, that same church also put a cooler outside our door when my mom was dying and said, "You text this number, and in 20 minutes, whatever you ask for will be in this cooler until you don't need it anymore."
Yeah.
And they literally did that. Thousands. I want whatever. Anything we asked for was in that cooler. And that was one of the first times I really had to like repent.
Mm.
Because I did not like those people for a little while there. And like I don't know, my wife and I fight a lot sometimes. Less
Mm-hmm.
now than we used to, but like being in community just sucks.
Yeah.
And I think the community can suck a lot. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting as I've heard this also from Buddhists. I've also
Yeah.
heard this from Hindu folks who sit in Hinduism and you know what I mean? Like the Quakers and all sorts of folks go through this, right? And
Yeah.
in fact, it was funny as I was just listening to Theo Vaughn interview that Amish kid, you know, and it was so funny.
Okay. I haven't heard it. I don't even know the Amish kid you're talking about.
I mean, it just literally says Theo Vaughn interviews an Amish kid.
Okay. 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 Amazing. Okay.
But the kid is on his like Rumspringer, which it's like it's built into it. It's like, hey, this community might not be for you. Like,
Yeah.
go test the waters kind of thing. Okay. What's hard to be a Christian? It's hard to be in any community. And
Yeah.
there are ways that I see it, things that I see so much harm being done in the name of my religion. So many of my queer friends, so many of the homeless people I work with that are just harmed actively and on purpose by this religion. Of course, I don't want to be part of it.
Yes.
And yet, the cooler.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the people who, when my wife was in postpartum depression, helped send us to on site so we could get help.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the church who
Man. Yeah.
paid for, I mean, that was an evangelical church that paid for that,
Yep.
straight up.
Yep.
Evangelical church that my wife still goes to on Friday nights to listen to the music that saved her. The same place that when she was a kid and her parents got divorced, that she would walk miles to go to just go to the youth group. And then they started driving her there, right?
Mm.
The same church that when I barely knew Chelsea's dad when I proposed, sent some pastors over to grill me and make sure that I was good enough for her, you know,
Yeah.
protecting her. Um, the same church that I come from that feeds 300 people every Sunday morning and does 50 showers to restore dignity. Like that is also still there. And then, of course, there's the teachings of Jesus. And may we not recognize the ways in which Jesus was in constant conflict with the place that he came from.
Mm.
Like that is what it means to do this.
Mm.
And so, yeah, dude, I what I don't like is that it doesn't get to be my way.
Mm.
And I want it to be my way. And it sucks when it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm as selfish in that regard as it comes. I think I'm the smartest guy in the room sometimes, believe it or not. I think I know how it all should be, and it's not, and I hate that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I don't want to. Like any of us, like none of us wants to be in a place where we don't have full control and can do it all. And yet, um, And if we can't find the beauty in it, we're not going to find it anywhere else either. And
Yeah.
so you can leave, like for what it's worth, you can leave. And there are, of course, these these circumstances of danger and abuse where we have to leave. And
Yep.
I am very in favor of that, and I help a lot of people leave.
Yep.
But if we can't just stay in some suffering, like there's a story of and I can't I wish I really need to work and figure out where I found it, but there's this story, Levi, of this guy who was done with the Christian church. He moves to India to go join a Buddhist monastery.
Hmm.
And he gives all the reasons why he's like fed up with the church and fundamentalism and evangelicalism and blah blah blah. And the Buddhist monk says, "Okay, how old are you?" And the guy says, "I'm 44." He says, "Okay." He said, "Well, you have two choices. You can join this monastery, and it'll take you 44 years to get to this point, and then you can become enlightened after that. So you'll get enlightened at about 88. Or you can go back to America, stay a Christian, and it'll only take you a few more years to be enlightened.
Hmm.
You can choose."
Yeah.
And so I think for me, there's so much that is hard.
Yeah.
And yet it has given me every sense of hope and divine connection that I've ever needed. And I can't help but find Christ in all of it. And I'm so thankful for that. So, um, but it doesn't mean I can't do it different. And I
Yeah.
do it really different. And there's so many ways to find ways to do it different. And I think that's much of what Jesus did. He went on a big old journey of doing it different, and it
Yeah.
made everybody mad. And then they killed him because he did it different. So please don't kill me. Um, but yeah, man. And I think
My
Greg
friend.
Boyle does it
Yeah.
different, right? Yeah. I mean, they all
Hmm.
do it different. And that's what's so hopeful about those guys.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But do you know Corey Kilgannon?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. His music is wonderful. I'll send and it anyway. But he similar to what he always has this little quip about Jesus, like, I'm just trying to follow Jesus, and then he'll pause for a minute and be like, it didn't really work out that great for him.
No. Yeah, man. It's like not good at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, that's good. I appreciate that. And the honesty there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
What does what role does what role does Star Wars play in your
Hmm.
life?
Dude. Yeah. So I mean, it's so funny. So much. It's so like, man, what hat do I want to put on here?
I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to a lot of these
Yeah.
questions, but I
Yeah.
legitimately don't
Yeah.
know the answer to
Dude,
this one.
I love stars with my whole heart. And I think um what comes to mind is I can remember, like I was aware of the first three movies as a kid, but like there wasn't a lot of magic there. And then episode one came out, and I was like the prime age for that. And episode one comes out, and I remember the pod racing and all of that.
I was wondering if that was
Yeah.
the one. Did you have the N64 pod racing video game?
I actually never had video games ever,
Okay,
believe
okay,
it or
okay,
not.
okay. All right.
But I can the image that comes to mind is Darth Maul sits there and the lightsabers come out and there was that scene there and and I just was in awe. Complete and full wonder and awe. And it's just like that moment watching that movie feels like pure childlikeness to me.
Hmm.
And so I think there's just this sense of like that is the symbol of my childlikeness. And so one of the places where I go back to a lot is like that feeling, right? And I think this is a great spiritual practice. We have to tune into awe and wonder, obviously. Um, and so I fell in love with Star Wars, and I would watch the new movies and things like that. So it always was something I loved. And then fast forward, a whole handful of years, and when I had worked at Loyal for so long and I was overworked, finding all my, I had lost every bit of who I was, but I was a very successful entrepreneur. In my healing, I needed a couple things. One was I needed to figure out how to awaken my childlike wonder. So going back to the womb, then you become a child again.
Yep.
My wife and I started going to Disneyland, and but then also I started engaging in like the Star Wars universe, and because it sort of attached to me to that feeling. But then as I did that, it's so expansive. It like I mean the universe just goes forever. I mean, there's history books, like actual published history books of like cultures within the Star Wars universe, right? And one of the things I just never knew was how much rest I needed. So you
Uh,
mentioned being in a continuous existential crisis, right?
yeah.
Well, Star Wars takes me out of there and I can enter into a whole new world. A
I
whole new
I
world.
love that.
Um, and so, for example, on a very practical level, on my Sabbath, I Sabbath on Saturdays. I don't read the Bible. I don't read philosophy. I don't read spirituality. I only read Star Wars on my Sabbath
Okay.
because I can't engage that work. There's a point where it's not restful anymore. And so
Yes.
to read a Star Wars book or comic or whatever really takes me there. And yeah, and so I just love it. And I mean, I'm vlogs and podcasts and all of that. And it's the one thing I've also vowed being an entrepreneur. Um, it's funny that like I've vowed that I'm not ever going to try to monetize Star Wars in my life
Okay.
so that it can just be something that I only consume, that I only learn about with no agenda at all.
I
Because so
love
much of
that.
what I love has is still my job,
Totally.
right? In
Very,
terms of
yes.
like spirituality and all this conversations, like I have to monetize this to some degree.
Yes.
But Star Wars, I've just vowed that I won't. And so there's a detachment there that it can be something I can be entirely passionate about, and that's it. And so,
I love that
um,
so much.
infinite metaphors. I mean, there's characters. But yeah, that's kind of it. It teaches me to be a kid, and it lets me just tap into that vibe.
I love that.
I have my Buddha Yoda right here.
I saw him. I saw him. I love it. Star
Um,
Superman is that to me. I
yeah.
just went and saw that new Superman movie, and the first comic I ever had was a
Mhm.
Superman comic
Wow.
that my dad gave me.
Oh,
It's still somewhere in a Ziploc in
yeah.
some chest, and it's
Hmm.
a piece of shit. I mean, it's completely
Yeah.
busted up. It's not like it's a
Yeah.
mint condition comic or anything. It's literally in a bag so that the cover doesn't completely fall off of the
Yeah.
last staple or something like that, But man, I went and saw the new Superman movie and was just like
Mm-hmm.
every, childlikeness.
Yep.
I remember sitting at my grandparents' house on their disgusting shag carpet watching all of the original Christopher Reeves movies. Um, always brings back the good memories of my dad, and it's just I love it. I
Yeah.
love those things.
Mm. It's so
That's so
good.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do this,
You would,
Levi. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead. Go
yeah.
ahead. No, you
No, no,
go.
no, no, no,
You
no.
go,
I'm
girl.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. What were you gonna say?
Hit me one more. Hit me with one more.
Hit you with one more.
I have one more thing that I want to do, but you're about to ask another question.
I was gonna bring it back around. I was gonna ask you about a favorite book of mine that I was very excited about when I read it a year and a half ago, was Eckhart Tolle's A
Mhm.
New Earth. And I
Mhm.
had shared that online, and you responded very enthusiastically about it.
Mhm.
And I was just, we've talked a lot about Christian spirituality. We've talked a lot about your role,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
obviously we're both a part of a tradition and a stream, and there's so much that has informed outside of that and helped us see things in a really beautiful way.
Mhm.
What are some things like that for you? How was why did you respond so
Yep.
enthusiastically to that? And what else have you pulled from that you think has been beneficial to your life?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, first of all, his voice is just perfect. And
Yes.
it doesn't really matter what he says, it just sounds true because of how
Yeah.
he talks. So I just love him. Um, yeah, there's so much, dude. There's so much.
Yeah.
I think the first place, like what else has done that, and I'll tell you some of those other streams I dabble in. First, I think Star Wars is my first answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I was and I
You know,
was I
like
was trying to
yeah, Yep.
connect the dots.
So
Yep.
Star Wars and Disneyland in every
Yep.
way. Um, there is just something about those experiences, those feelings. Um, I think for me, when you think about the womb, and again, this will all be in my book that might get published someday. Goodness gracious. The womb is a five senses experience. You feel it, you taste it, you see it, to it's fully immersive. And so I think for me, and I think this is why, of course, sex is such a special thing. But I also think there's certain experiences that are just unique. So when you go into a fully immersive book where it feels like you can taste it, you see it, smell it, is why things like Disneyland are so special. I think that's why Meow Wolf is blowing up across the
Mm-hmm.
world because it offers us a fully immersive. So things like getting tattooed
Mm-hmm.
is so much more than just getting tattooed. You feel it, you hear it, you smell it. There's almost a taste to it. Um, Riding a motorcycle, stuff like this. There's a
Yes.
and so for me, anything that makes me, first of all, feel fully immersed is very womb like.
Yes.
And so I think any time that I can put myself into an environment like that, this last weekend, I went to a college football game in Texas. It was one of my friends. It was his 40th birthday, and we went. And I mean, it was a religious experience, and it was like mass.
Mm.
There's outfits, there's traditions, there's songs, there's chanting, and it was a culture. And it was so fun. I'm still buzzing from that experience. College football in Texas. The Chariot, I think they were the first ones that taught me that.
Yes.
And
Talk
and
about
you
embodiment in
yeah,
the
yes.
hardcore scene. I mean, it
Exactly.
is just
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
that.
I mean, and I had no idea the depth. I mean they still mean so much. I mean, I got Chariot lyrics here. I've got like okay. So immersive. Anything immersive, I think, teaches us about God. Secondly, um, anything that helps us cry. I think tears always take us to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Tears always take us to the truth. So, outside of like Christian spirituality, anything that's fully immersive, anything that makes us cry takes us closer. Um, Aside from that, it's really interesting. You know, um, I grew up in a small town, so I uh I was not as all the way in the punk scene as much as I wanted to. Thank God for YouTube. So I always say I grew up punk adjacent,
Yeah.
because I never got to go to CBGBs or I never quite went on tour with bands and things like that in the more traditional sense. Um but I think punk really also did that in that they had these values that they stuck to, and those values didn't come from like the Bible, right? And so like they were my first introduction to people that had values outside of where I was told there are values to be had.
Mm-hmm.
And so hearing about straight edge or hearing about like it's interesting, a lot of punks had have flirted with like some versions of Hinduism or Buddhism and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
um and so yeah, like I was very influenced by some of that. So for example, um so yeah, punk in every way. I, to be a little bit more present and a little bit more modern, I think I've been vegan for almost 3 years now, and I did it purely for health reasons, similarly to the Wim Hof method, and I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea how that would awaken me to so many other things in terms of just like choosing to live a certain way really spiritually formed me. So I
Mm.
guess I'm hesitant first to talk about books or talk
Yeah.
about teachers because again, in the West, we're always taught read yourself into new health.
Yes.
Learn your way to this new shit.
Yep.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, there are some great teachers.
Yep.
And Eckhart Tolle, oh my gosh, like I owe him tons. But it's been the immersive experiences. It's been the way watching punks make decisions about how they eat according to their
Yes.
ethics, watching punks dress according to their ethics. Um, yeah, like watching people design theme parks in these
Yeah.
ways, like
Yeah.
that has taught me to live a new way.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
And so to me, it's more so like I would say one of my great saints is actually Anthony Bourdain. Um
Hell yeah.
and he and
Where did you find that candle, man?
yeah. Dude, I've got all sorts of them. I got Kendrick Lamar,
Oh
uh,
my God.
I have Larry David,
Oh my God. That's so good.
um, Paul Rudd, all sorts of them.
That's the best.
Anyways, like Anthony Bourdain, like he taught me how to be curious about other people by
Yeah.
his shows. And like he just was never like he was always kind of cynical and sort of spicy, but also like had all these conversations. So um living, like traveling, going to other places. But yeah, I think Eckhart Tolle for sure in every way. I mean, I'm trying to think you know, Benedictine hospitality, Benedictine
Mm-hmm.
spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Bono has done a lot for me, and I know he's still
Mm-hmm.
Christian adjacent, but like, but just some of his stuff again, and like he's pretty punk rock in nature. And I'll say one more thing. If anybody's ever even listened to this long, but this is so good for me. I'm so thankful that you did this, Levi. Um, has actually been listening to um spiritual people who talk about money.
Huh.
And that has really changed a lot of my life. Whether it's been like kind of some like black sort of like Baptist and the kind of and it's not prosperity gospel. I'm not talking about that, but people who
Mm-hmm.
talk about abundance, people who
Yep.
talk about money unashamedly. That has taught me so much about myself in
Mm-hmm.
so many ways. And like not a and learning to live in an abundance mindset. And again, it comes back to belovedness, even that, like people who talk a lot about money say you have to believe you're worthy of it, or else it's
Yep.
not going to come to you. And it's like,
Yep.
oh, it comes back to worthiness. It comes back to belovedness again.
Yep.
Um, an exercise I do with people in my retreats, and again, I've learned this from some of these abundance teachers, like law of attraction people and stuff, is
Mm-hmm.
like they'll say, like, um, okay, Tyler, like imagine, like, what's the first thing I would say if somebody said, hey, Tyler, here's $50,000. What's the first thing you think? And I might say, like, well, what did I do to deserve that?
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know what to do with that. I wouldn't, or why me? Things like this.
Mm-hmm.
One of my answers is I've already gotten so many miracles. God wouldn't give me another one.
Hmm.
That's literally the first thing that came to my mind in doing that exercise, which then
Interesting.
tells me this mindset about, wait, is God like, do I really believe God would not give me another miracle? Do I really
Yeah.
believe God's all done providing for me? And all of a sudden, that shit spills out into everything.
Yep.
And money really,
Man.
I think money is like a really good like illuminator to like those deeper stories.
Yeah.
Like
That's really
money
good.
really points them out.
Yep.
And so there's this guy Preston Smiles that talks a lot about money I've really enjoyed. And yeah, like it's a scary thing for me to say publicly, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
like, some of these law of attraction teachers and stuff, um, and it's crazy. Like, I actually have been financially probably better off than I've ever been since I've been leaning into this stuff, and, but it's really taught me a lot about God and God's love and how
Hmm.
lovely I am. And
Yeah.
so, Eckhart Tolle, especially though, yep, him, especially him talking about unnecessary suffering is one of his teachings I really love, and
Uh-huh.
yeah,
That's good. I appreciate you saying the vulnerable thing on the money
yeah.
front too. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. It's really good.
Thanks.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this.
Okay.
Um, we're gonna do this more someday. But I always end my podcasts over the last couple. I haven't done it for all 50 episodes, but it's an exercise that I think is just so important for us to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I want to end it by asking you, um, what are some things, Levi, that you love about you?
Hmm.
You've spent all this time asking me questions or whatever, but I wanted to ask you that. Um, yeah, what are some things, Levi, that you love about you? And you'll be a guest on the podcast. I've been saving. I didn't want to. I don't know. I've been embarrassed to ask you because I don't want to like leverage my friends and stuff too much. Like, I've been inviting a lot
Never
of.
be embarrassed to ask me anything,
I
man.
know, but it's like I've been asking all these people I like kind of know.
Yeah.
And anyways, so we'll learn all about you at some point. But yeah, what
Sounds
are some
good.
things, Levi, that you love about you?
That's Oh man, what a revealing question. I love I love my care for people.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, I love my desire to empathize with others to the degree that I'm able and to seek to listen as well and non-judgmentally as possible.
Mhm.
Um, I'm actually, yeah, I mean, and I'm leaning into some of that right now, or trying to. I think I told you this before, but I just, 2 months ago started a spiritual direction program,
Mhm.
and that was born out of a lot of coaching work that I do around writing for people. But the vast majority of those conversations have nothing to do with writing. Like it's all hearing what people are going through and figuring out their stuck places, and or not figuring it out but just being with them in it. And I think that, yeah, it's a deep love of mine to be able to sit with others and hear them.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
one thing that kind of coincides with that, and I admit that I have a love-hate relationship with it, because I think I've actually I can look at the places where this has been true and see the ways in which I've maybe not been boundaried enough or allowed myself to be pretty hurt because of it. But I think, one of the most uh, hopelessly, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt
Mhm.
people
Yes.
that I know.
Yes. Yes.
I always, always try to see the good in whatever's happening, or at the very least, if I can't see any good, I defer to chalking it up to a wound that the not good is coming from,
Yeah.
and at least trying
Mm.
to view a person's humanity, whatever the outworking of that is in their life right now. And I actually have come to value that
Yes.
more in myself.
Wow.
I think at times it can look like naivete, uh, and maybe sometimes it is, um, and that's okay too.
Yes.
Um, because I want to remember the beautiful thing, and I'm it's interesting when I look at like personality types or Enneagram work or something. Like with me, I'm a 9 with a 1 wing,
Mm.
and
Uh,
one of the core unhealth things for us is bitterness. And I think that I don't know that I actually I do think that that can work itself. It'll take a long time for me to realize that that's what's going on.
yeah.
So it's there, but I do think that one of the ways, and here I actually think about a movie that you and I used to go back and forth on a lot. everything everywhere all at once, right?
Yep.
Levi
Hmm.
the Bagel. I used to post that bagel and the eyeball everywhere, you know. But the one of the characters in there, there's this quote that got shared so much, and I don't know exactly what it was, but it was something like I fight to see the good here, or I fight to like
Hmm.
see the joy. It you know maybe in that sense it was even something of survival for that person, but I really, and maybe sometimes it's that for me too. Like I could I could stand to take people at face value a little
Yep.
bit more for the sake of my own protection or maybe the protection of those around us. But beneath that, I really believe in their good,
Yes.
and and I like that. I like that about myself.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm. I like that about you too.
Thank you.
Yes.
I like laughing a lot,
Yes.
and I'm
Yes, you do.
very happy when I get the opportunity to, because I tend to be your classic melancholic poet guy who like has a hard time touching on joy.
Yep.
But when I touch on it, man, fuck, it's
Yes.
good. It
Yes.
is good,
So good.
and
Mm.
and I love my friends. Like
Mm.
I love I have been so blessed to have such not just incredible friends, but an incredible amount of incredible friends.
Yeah.
Some of that's the result of a miracle of a vocation that I've gotten to have over the last 15 years and just meeting people everywhere. But
Hmm.
I'm so thankful that they have counted me a friend worth having as
Yes.
well, and really, really value. Um, I mean, my house has been a damn hotel for the last 6 weeks. Like there have just been people here nonstop, and
Mm.
sometimes that's tiring, and I'm tired of being a host, and I definitely need my like retreat.
Hmm.
But man, what a is there a better problem to have?
Yeah.
It's just
Totally.
it's such a beautiful thing.
Yep. Mm.
Those are the few a couple of things that come to mind off the bat, and I appreciate you asking me that because I don't spend a lot of time there.
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time there, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, and it means it's like moving for me to be able to reflect on it and have the permission to say, oh yeah, actually, I like this about myself. That means a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah,
Mm.
thanks, Tyler.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
Love you.
I love you too, man. I'm so glad that you invited me to have this conversation with you, and you're killing it, dude. I love all the stuff that's coming out, and I love seeing your creativity skyrocket. We didn't even talk about your damn
Mm.
Russian roulette of a brain that you've had to go through over the last
Yep.
couple of years, but dude, the way
Yeah.
it has like catalyzed so much beautiful overflowing
Yeah.
goodness and life for
Mm.
me and so many people has just been
Yeah.
it's seriously like such an encouragement all the time. So I'm super
Wow.
grateful for you and everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Levi.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everyone, thank you for being here to my first Joe Rogan Experience podcast.
You
Um,
knew you had to talk to a long-winded ass friend,
Holy cow.
Yeah.
But this is what it's like with Levi, and just for those of you guys who are listening, he truly is one of the best people I know on the planet. And yeah, I just there couldn't have been a better person for me to ask to do this. And so I just feel so honored to have him as a friend. And um yeah, thanks for listening. And um I'll link all of his stuff down below, and I share his stuff a lot, but you can find him everywhere, Levi the Poet. And yeah, we'll see you all next week on the Tyler Hill podcast.